Hi, and welcome to our presentation of AI design lessons for social modeling at scale from the AIIDE 2021 conference. There's a link to the full paper below the YouTube video. I am Matthew Viglione. I'm one of the co-founders and lead designer at SomaSim. This paper was also written with Ethan Robison, formerly of SomaSim, now at Naughty Dog, Robert Zubek, also of SomaSim, and Ian Horswill from Northwestern University. So today we're going to have a brief overview of the design of City of Gangsters, where this paper comes from, and then sort of our big design lessons that we came up with. So I'm going to start with a description of City of Gangsters, then Ethan's going to talk about what our big four lessons were learned during the design process, and then at the end I'm going to come back and sort of discuss the context that allowed us to develop this sort of unique partnership that we had to create the design for this game. The origin of this paper came from our design for City of Gangsters, which is a tycoon management game set during Prohibition in the US. As a player, your job is to maintain a viable economy and business where you produce and distribute things that people demand in the city. That means you have to maintain production networks with raw materials and keep your customers happy. The problem, however, is that in City of Gangsters, Prohibition has happened and everything that you're doing has just become illegal. So you're not just running a business, you're running an illegal business. And that was sort of the main conceit of the game. What is it like to run the mafia as a business? So the problem that you run into is that everything that you're trying to buy and sell is illegal. That means that you have to know a guy or a gal, which is another key constraint of our game, is that you have to know someone in order to do things. Engaging in this kind of illegal trade requires mutual trust, which requires a system of social connections that becomes very important. Maintaining and managing this social system becomes just as crucial as keeping your illegal economy going and functioning. Everything that happens in this economy is sort of accomplished by getting ins with others, by using favors that you gain in the social network to expand your markets, to get new territory, to recruit new crew members, to learn new skills, to enlarge your production, and there are lots of other things that are all done via conversation with NPCs through the game who all maintain social connection. Another key design pillar of our game was that we wanted the game to be set in large, procedurally generated cities, so different versions of Chicago or Cincinnati or Pittsburgh or other large American cities. We wanted these cities to be geographically expansive. We wanted them to be visually huge and give the player a lot to explore. So as a consequence, they also needed to be full of people, and people that you could meet, interact with, and talk to. We were looking for a vibrant, expansive city that felt alive. So each version of Chicago that you create, for example, will have between 1,000 and 1,500 NPCs. Each has a family and friendship connections that you could each get to know. And so that means that every time you create a new Chicago, there are different social networks, different ways to interact, different opportunities that present themselves, and they are all mitigated and accessed through social network and conversation. So why did we go this direction? Well, we wanted replayability. We wanted each city to be different, so with different challenges, so that as the players play Chicago 3 or 4 or 5 different times, they're going to find different experiences in each time, based on who you know, who you talk to, who you buy and sell with, as they largely depend on who you get to know and and with whom you maintain good relationships. So your actions have positive and negative consequences, not just on the NPCs who are the direct recipients of your actions, but those actions spread through the social network and open or block further opportunities. You help someone pay off a loan, their family could be grateful to you. You decide to have a conversation with a corner hooligan with a baseball bat instead of just words, that means their whole family is going to know about the action that you performed and maybe cut off from opportunity going further. So before handing this over to Ethan, I just wanted to do a quick summary of our design challenges. So on the one hand, we had a social economy and the tracking of relationships and the presenting of that information to the player. Then on the other hand, we had 1,500 agents in an open city where there is no set progression path or way to come through the city or play the game. So how do we present this world to the players in a way that is meaningful for them to interact with? How do we track the social information? How do we track who knows whom? How do we track just all of the various actions that you have and guide the player meaningfully through this social environment that we've created in City of Gangsters?
Now that we've got the gameplay and aesthetic design goals covered, we want to talk about the AI design goals and a few important lessons that we learned in the process of making the social AI for City of Gangsters. We found 4 things in particular to be important. The first was the legibility of social actions and their consequences. The second was the reversibility of those same actions. The third was having a succinct set of social norms, and the fourth was the fungibility of individuals vis-a-vis social actions. Let's jump right in. Legibility of social actions. The consequences of any given action need to be clear, otherwise the player is fumbling in the dark. There's a classic game AI lesson here. Any sufficiently inscrutable agent, no matter how sophisticated they may be under the hood, might as well be a weighted random number generator. The player needs to know what they did, and what happened. Similarly, the prior actions and consequences for a given relationship need to be recorded and surfaced for the player's review. This is to help differentiate among the hundreds or thousands of agents in the simulation, but it's also a memory device. After all, players might be returning to examine a relationship after an hour, a week, or a month of real-world time. Legibility, surfacing, and recording things for review all sound like straightforward ideas, and they are, but they're also foundational. Unless the player can deduce why something happened, you are on the path of frustration. Next, we have the reversibility of actions. The player, especially the inexperienced player, is going to make mistakes because of fallibility, but also because learning a complex system of simulated social norms takes some time. In complicated physics-based puzzle games, we don't expect the player to perfectly forward simulate the results of any given action. We let the game do that simulation, and we give the player the tools to respond. But, unlike a physics puzzle game, a social economy game like City of Gangsters doesn't have a reset or an undo button, so we needed to make sure that the player had the power to get themselves out of a bad situation. We solved this problem by allowing the player a panoply of redundant routes to any particular outcome. They might repair a damaged relationship by offering someone a good deal on bootlegged alcohol, or they might do a task for them. Or they could use social favors with a mutual acquaintance to bolster their relationship, or in keeping with multiple routes to success, they could use social favors through some other mutual acquaintance to do the same. We always made sure that the player was never wanting for a variety of options, lest they paint themselves into a social corner. Third, we have a succinct set of social norms. Players need to be able to ascertain which rules are applying to move the system from one state to another. In physics games, you've got gravity. In social economy games, you have the enemy of my enemy is my friend. On the one hand, maybe, having a lot of rules could give you a richer and more realistic social simulation. But on the other hand, having more rules means the player needs more data points to glean a pattern from the underlying behavior of the system. Furthermore, we found that the relatively few rules we used in City of Gangsters were more than enough to provide a feeling of the most important social norms for a Prohibition-era criminal syndicate simulator. To put it slightly differently, we could have included a ton of social norms, but it probably wouldn't have served our design and aesthetic goals more than the half dozen or so we actually ended up including. It would have been more work for less payoff on the design side, and we would have muddied the waters for the player. Finally, the fungibility of individuals. Because of the scale of the social network, it was crucial that individuals be fungible with one another. If you consider someone in a particular state, where the state is itself understandable thanks to rule number 1, legible social actions, and wanting someone else to be in that same state, the player can trust that the kinds of actions that got a particular result with one agent will have similar results with other similar agents. If you're nice to somebody, they like you. If you're nice to somebody else, they also like you. There isn't a complex series of calculations the player has to undertake to figure out the result of a given action if they've seen it before. They can plug individuals into the equation and trust their expectations. We didn't include a wide variety of agents who might respond differently to given social actions. Instead, we relied on scale and other mechanical variety to give the members of the social network a sense of feeling like individuals. But once the player knows that giving somebody a good deal on a business transaction is beneficial, they can keep that knowledge around forever. Before we wrap up, though, we want to reiterate our design pillars. First, an emphasis on social simulation in all aspects of the game design. Time and again, we looked for places where you gotta know somebody could be leveraged to serve the fiction of running a Prohibition-era crime syndicate. We worked hard to integrate every mechanic into the rich social network simulation underpinning the game as a whole. Second, we always provide a sense of scale and variety through the game's 1,000-plus procedurally generated NPCs, and their procedurally generated families, and their procedurally assigned social connections, and the spreading of these same agents across the sprawling cityscape. The player should always feel that there's a potentially lucrative relationship just a little bit past the edge of their territory. Third, and finally, we wanted the player to learn principles, not feel the pressure of some prescriptive route, through the early, or later for that matter, parts of a play session. We do provide a few basic connections to get them off the ground, but it's their own mastery of the social simulation that really has them working the city's black market. In a certain sense, keeping these design ideas in mind, we always had some means of knowing where to go next with our AI design. The 4 AI design lessons followed naturally. They're notes we took along the way rather than first principles that we brought to some initial brainstorming session.
I just wanted to finish with a quick word about what sort of enabled us to produce and commercially release City of Gangsters, with what we think are fairly novel social economies and mechanics that's underpinned by a fairly novel technological approach that uses constraint solvers and population generation and a custom implementation of Prologue that is being presented in a separate paper at this conference. These systems are the result of a long back and forth with the academic community, specifically the computer science department at Northwestern and Ian Horswill. Ian had an idea for putting Prologue in Unity and using it to create, track, and modify social graphs. We tried using it in a previous game and found that it didn't meet our performance needs for a commercial game, but we were enamored with the possibilities of the kind of social simulation that it could allow. So we shared these problems with Ian, and he created a new system. With Ethan as his grad student and working with us, we were able to create a system that was performant and that I, as a non-programming designer, could understand and use. We just wanted to mention that in addition to presenting a novel social design and a novel logic programming implementation, this could also be a possibly novel collaboration between industry and academia. So thank you for your attention in our discussion of AI in social design, and we look forward to talking with you in the discussion following. Thanks.